Well, the Warlocks win. No, I'm not simply talking about Warnock winning his reelection bid in Georgia, but literally the Warlocks win. And by that, I mean this. Warnock, who I affectionately refer to as Warlock, this is one warped individual. He is liblunism on steroids. He is just a wretched candidate from the perspective of what his personal beliefs and ideology is. So that's one issue about Warnock himself winning re-election there in Georgia. When I say the Warlocks, plural, win, I'm also referring to the warlock on the GOP side, Mitch McConnell. You heard me, and I didn't stutter when I said it. Mitch McConnell. Herschel Walker was defeated, not because he was, quote, this weak, horrible, wretched candidate. He was awful, yada, yada, yada. Remember, our country literally just elected a guy with brain damage in Pennsylvania to be a U.S. Senator. Brain damage. Brain damage. A guy who literally cannot communicate. A guy that literally needs a speak and spell to be able to talk to people. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be ugly. I'm not trying to be in any way hurtful to Mr. Fetterman. I want him to get well. I want him to be well. I don't like his politics, but as a person, I don't want him having to suffer with this. I don't want him having to uh, uh, not be able to speak, to articulate, to interact with his wife and family like he would like to. So take the time, get yourself well, do your rehab, do what you have to do. But right now, not even understanding if you can actually comprehend everything that gets coming at you, and you're going to be a senator making decisions that affect nearly 300 million people. So I don't want to hear about the whole weak candidate thing. This is a Mitch McConnell who hates, loathes, and despises Donald J. Trump. So he never got behind the Herschel Walker candidacy. Didn't give him any real money, didn't give him any real help. And even in this runoff election, though he was kind of forced because all eyes were watching to put some money behind Herschel, because after all, he was the Republican nominee. But in reality, Mitch McConnell was more than willing to sacrifice the Senate. He did it on purpose because he doesn't want there to be Trumplicans there, because Mitch McConnell is going to do everything he can right now behind closed doors, but eventually he'll be more overt about it. He doesn't want Donald Trump to run again. He's going to work very hard to stop Donald Trump. And that includes even hurting his own party. That includes hurting us. That includes hurting the Republican base. He doesn't care because Mitch McConnell doesn't have any real core values other than Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is about himself. He is about power. He is going to keep himself there. And understand, I know sometimes you might think, well, he's in the minority, and what does he really do when the Republicans aren't, quote, in charge of the Senate? What does he do? He's in charge of the money. He's in charge of the influence. He's in charge of the favors. This is why the Republicans really need to, forgive me for being this crass about it, grow a pair and give Mitch McConnell his walking papers. They need to get behind a new minority leader for the Senate. And we need somebody that has some actual integrity, a backbone, character, and what's this other thing? Values. The core political values that we who are conservative espouse, not just talking points. Mitch McConnell is a career politician. He's a rhino. He's a Democrat dressed in Republican drag. That's Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell did nothing to try to promote and help Herschel Walker. Listen, Herschel Walker may not have been the greatest politician we've ever run. He certainly wasn't the worst, and he was certainly beyond capable of doing the job. The other issue is there in Georgia. They've got a Republican governor who has done some things to try to fix and correct their wretched voting system there, but he hasn't gotten everything fixed. And here we go again. This ballot harvesting. You know, Warnock was leading by 300,000 votes in the early the early voting. I mean, before we had yesterday and people actually showing up at the polls to vote, Warnock was already ahead by 300,000 votes. Because, you know, Democrats have cooked the system there in Georgia that, you know, basically you can just vote and vote, just keep on voting, and just voting just never stops because we're just always voting. Now, the Republicans in California, they have to deal with that same type of system, and they have blazed a trail, and they have shown Republicans across the country, here's how you do it. Because they have flipped seats in California in the House of Representatives that have been blue for, I want to say centuries, but literally for decades, 30, 40 years, never had a Republican elected out of that congressional district, and now they have flipped multiple seats. I mean, the media's not talking about it because they're hoping, it goes away and it was just some kind of freak enigma, and they really, really don't want other Republicans figuring out what the GOP in California has figured out. They're doing ballot harvesting. They're just doing what the Democrats are doing, and they have found that obviously the key of their voting bloc, even in liberal California, is evangelical Christians. So they put up ballot boxes in evangelical churches so people could come worship and drop off their vote. And it worked. I said before, yes, I agree with what Donald Trump said when he announced his re-election bid, that we need to really streamline and simplify how voting is done. You have to be registered to vote. You have to have proof of identification and same-day voting. Get rid of all the early voting, all of this nonsense, which becomes too easy to manipulate and, I'm sorry, cheat. But until we get there, I've said this, until we get there, what we have to do is we've got to flip governors' mansions and state attorney general positions to Republican, to conservative Republican, so that they can actually begin to fix the voting laws within their state. But until we get there, we have to use the same methodology that the Democrats use. And what do the Democrats do? It's not about getting behind a candidate. It's about getting behind their party. Do you really think all these Georgians really, it was about, we got to have Warnock. He's done such an amazing job. What Warnock has not done, and this is key to understand too, he's not been wretchedly horrible yet as a senator from the state of Georgia. In other words, Dan Bongino put it this way, and I think he's probably spot on with this. Sadly, for a lot of Americans, things just haven't gotten quite bad enough yet for even the mainstream, sane Democrats to part with their party. They don't like what's happening, and they're certainly not part of the woke agenda. They're not part of the overreach, the overbearing, the endless mandates, the big brother living your life, the new normal being, making up genders and non-binary. They're not. Sane Democrats are not good with any of that. Sane Democrats don't like what's going on with the economy. They don't like paying what they're paying for gas. They don't like having to deal with, shortages in our supply chain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they know that inflation is very, very, very real. But they haven't quite gotten to the place yet where they fully are willing to understand, embrace, and acknowledge it's their party that created this nightmare. They still believe in the hyperbole of, Orange Man bad. It's amazing. Somebody like a Bill Maher who agrees with us on so many things now. And he understands even about the whole transgender issue and kids and he gets it about the overreach of mandates and how did Fauci ever get elevated to sainthood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he'll immediately go back to, but the Republicans, they're really evil. Really? How bad were you doing financially under Donald Trump? And how good are you doing now under Joe Biden? How many of your rights and things were stripped away from you under Donald Trump? And how many of your rights have been stripped away from you under Joe Biden? They're still, their default in their software of their brain is Republicans bad, Orange Man real bad. So they aren't quite there yet. They and again, I warned you over the summer that Biden and the Democrats on Capitol Hill would shift things just enough to ease the pressure off. Pump all of our strategic oil supply into the economy to artificially kind of lower the price a little bit. Do what they can to improve supply chain issues and, somehow make you at least think things are getting better. And if all else fails, blame it on Trump, blame it on Russia. Russia. If we weren't having to deal with Ukraine, you wouldn't have inflation. That is not how inflation works. So they improved things just enough. And Warnock hadn't done anything so over the top outrageous that I am sure that Georgians thought, because again, it's tough to beat an incumbent. As long as that incumbent hasn't really screwed up or molested a 10-year-old kid, they get to go back and do their job over and over. Because I'll tell you, the people in Kentucky aren't much smarter if they keep sending back bitch McConnell. Was that a little too hard truth for you today? So the Warlocks win. Now, somebody just commented, well, Pastor Marty, it really could be part of God's plan. Well, we do understand that God is sovereign and nothing happens that he doesn't know is going to happen. That doesn't necessarily mean he directs everything to happen, because if you're going to go over the top with sovereignty, as far as that means God has to control everything. I got into a rather lengthy debate one day with a hardcore Calvin Nazi, that's a Calvinist Nazi, who said, yes, God is so sovereign, he directs everything, even the actions of a sinner. And I said, really? So he directs the actions of a pedophile? He said, absolutely. And I went, wait, what? What did you just say? God is sovereign. God is in control. God controls all. God knows what's going to happen. As a parent, having raised children, I was there, if you will, bear with me for the sake of illustration, they're sovereign. They were my kids. While they were minors living under my roof, I was responsible for them. That didn't mean I always knew what they were up to. And it certainly didn't mean if they did something that I did not approve of, that I then condoned it and sanctioned it and directed it. No, nay, they had a free will. And the same is true with people. And yes, I understand that God in his sovereign control, do I think certain things are being allowed to deteriorate here? Absolutely. Especially the more this country turns its back on God, on the word, on traditional values. Of course, to quote Chunk Yogurt, of course it's going to get depravedly bad. And look at what we're endorsing now. Drag queens conditioning and sexualizing 5-year-olds, all in the name of a reading program at the public library or your local school. But my point is, we've got too many, even conservatives, even Republicans. You're kind of sticking your head in the sand. And I know you're on overload with all of this. You're like the speech in the movie Network. You just want to be left alone. You want to buy your radial tires and drink coffee out of your coffee maker and watch TV, even though you know what's happening right outside your door in the streets and in our political process. It's not right. but you're at the point where you can't handle or process any more information of corruption and conspiracy, and you're just done. Just please, for God's sake, leave me alone. Well, I'm going to say what the character in Network said. I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm going to spur you on, as the Bible would say, to greater works. You've got to be informed. You've got to be engaged. And you've got to understand this sick game that they are playing, because literally your rights are what's at stake here. And so as the media spins this all up, it's another defeat for Donald Trump. It shows more rips in the Republican Party, yada, yada, yada. Talking points, propaganda, bullhawk, fake news. Hey, Warnock, nobody's contesting the results of the election. Warnock won. How did he win? Well, they allow ballot harvesting there in Georgia. It's okay. You got 6 weeks to vote every day at the convenience store of your choice. And Republicans, though we understand what's happening and we complain about the early voting, and I'm against it, maybe it's time we start using the tactic so that we can achieve the objective, which is to win the offices we've got to win so we can make the changes that need to be made. But make no mistake, Mitch McConnell hates Donald Trump, does not want him to be president again, and does not want him to have any allies on Capitol Hill should he get elected president. Mitch McConnell sacrificed the Senate on purpose. That's the headline. He's the Warlock.